President Biden traveled to South Carolina today in an attempt to trumpet the pejorative term he's now embraced, Bidenomics. This effort comes even as polls demonstrate strong discontent with the president's economic policies, with just 38% of Americans approving of his handling of the economy. But can he make it a strength? Vice President Kamala Harris and key cabinet officials are also crisscrossing the country this week, delivering Bidenomics speeches of their own. Can they convince the American people the economy is actually good and getting better? Joining me now to discuss this, as well as some other Washington, D.C. intrigue, is Congressman Tim Burchett. He serves on the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability and the Committee on Foreign Affairs. He represents the 2nd Congressional District, Tennessee. Congressman Burchett, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you for having me on, Joseph. It's a pleasure, and I appreciate y'all putting out the good word.
Well, it's good to see you today. I'm going to give you a chance to respond to what President Biden has been talking about today. Here's part of what he said earlier today in South Carolina. Let's play clip 1.
Our plan is working, and one of the things I'm proudest of is working everywhere, not just in the coast and big cities like previous recoveries.
Congressman Burchett, is President Biden's economic plan working?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess if you're a Marxist, maybe. Honestly, it's he's riding on Trump's coattails as much as possible. This economic downturn. I mean, we were in COVID, and of course, you turn off the COVID talk, and the spigots are going to come on. Obviously, you're going to see some uptick, and what he's looking at too is where it was when he took office, and then it progressively got worse, and now it's getting better, and it's not anywhere near back to where it was when Trump was in office. So no, absolutely not him. I sort of think what they do is they have these little 25-year-old liberal kids come out of these publicly educated schools, and they're advising him and telling this is what you ought to do, and that's their think tank, and that's who's really got his ear is these young progressive liberals, and telling him what they think they want to hear. And the reality is the people that actually pay taxes and work in this country do not agree with this in any shape, form, or fashion. That's why his numbers are so far down.
And it does show that his effort to make this case is an uphill climb. But one of the arguments that they are making, and a leading talking point, has to do with inflation and the inflation rate. And I want to throw this graphic up on the screen from the White House that they've published showing there's been a decline, and this is true, in the inflation rate from a high of 9% to what it's at right now is 4% now. Notably, it was 1.4% when he took office. Congressman Burchett, should Americans be optimistic about what's happening with inflation at this point?
Well, I'm an optimistic person. I'm always hoping it'll turn around. But the reality is, if you were making $100,000 when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris began their reign of terror, so to speak, then you would be making the equivalent of $75,000 now. That's within a couple of years that your earning potential and power have dropped. So much like America's once proud prestige across the globe has dropped. And I think you're going to continue to see this. And they can keep saying these lies over and over and over and hoping that people will believe it. But you just got to go down to the supermarket and see the prices. And you're not going to. And then you see the signs. They're paying people X amount of dollars, unbelievable amount to flip burgers. But yet people aren't making it on that anymore. So it's just I think he's really putting out all he can. That he has, and what he has is not the truth, and it's a pitiful state of the trouble we've gotten into is we've cranked out so much money, we've given out so much money, all these programs, and COVID on down the line, and then and we have deflated the value of our dollar so much that I don't know that we can keep up with it, and then of course you have the Fed now. They're going to stick their fat nose right in the middle of it. And I don't think it's going to get any better. And I think if it does, it's artificially going to get better. And then the reality sets in that, you might be making more money, yet your dollars will buy so much less now that none of this matters.
Congressman, you just hinted at the spending problem. We have another chart I want to show that pre-COVID, the American people were spending $4.4 trillion annually. That was our budget. Post-COVID, it inflated to 6.8 trillion in 2021. As of 2023, it's down to 6.3 trillion, which is, of course, nearly a 50% increase from just a couple years prior to that. When we look at those numbers and the spending that happened during COVID, and that was part of a Republican administration, then certainly a Democratic administration, because of those spending increases, was inflation inevitable regardless of who the president was going to be?
No, I don't think it was. I think you saw a clear ending coming with COVID, yet they just keep generating more and more dollars. You know, the biggest fight we've had in the last few years is we're saying we want to go back to pre-COVID spending levels, and yet the liberals in Congress had said, "Oh, wait a minute, that'll cause a complete collapse." But you name me one government program that's been added to since COVID that has made your life better, and I dare say you couldn't name anything. And the reason is because the funding of these woke programs, things the State Department are exporting to our transgender. Beauty pageants, so you just name it down the list, and they should be exporting is America's good things that we do, our democracy, one, which we're failing at now, and of course capitalism, which to me seems to be is now a bad word being taught in our colleges and our campuses and our public institutions. So I think you've got a real deeper problem there than this, and they just keep adding to it with this crazy spending, $114 billion unchecked to Ukraine, and we don't know where that money's going. And you just go down the list, Joseph. It is just it's incredible the amount of spending that we're increasing on, and then yet when we put up a proposal, we brag about how we're going to decrease the rate of growth. Well, it's still growing. If it's growing, and the most conservative plan we had would still add $2 trillion a year, and in 10 years, or less than 10 years, the largest single item in our budget will be just interest on our loan. And who are we paying that interest to? Our enemies overseas, primarily China.
It is a potentially devastating scenario we're creating for ourselves. One other question, though, on the economy, because you talk about the spending, and everyone seems to recognize that it is unsustainable. But the way it's being framed by the White House, I think, is notable. And I want to give you a chance to respond to this. Let's play clip 2.
That's Bidenomics. It's rooted in what always worked best for this country. Investing in America. Because when you invest in our people, when you strengthen the middle class, we see stronger economic growth that benefits everybody.
Congressman, every time President Biden proposes legislation to spend trillions of dollars that we don't have and put it on the credit card, he refers to it as investing in America. What's the difference between investing, which in theory we all like, and merely spending money we don't have?
Well, if you look at the idea of excusing student loans, you're going to tell a kid going to Harvard or Yale that and some truck driver who's out there busting his hump every day, that he's going to have to pay for some kid's college education that should have read the fine print as an adult, yet all of a sudden they don't have responsibility. Again, another problem. It's the generation of everybody gets a trophy. Now everybody gets a free college education. And let me tell you, when you make something free, it becomes worth just that, nothing. And that is exactly what we're doing with these programs. And it just on down the line. Anytime he says we're going to invest in America, he's not investing in America. What he's doing is taking from the taxpayers and buying his reelection with your taxpayers by where he claims to be pushing up the middle class. In reality, he's doing everything from that. He's just paying people not to work, paying for programs that do not work, that have not worked, yet keeps investing our billions of, now it's upon trillions of dollars in programs that do not work. And that is his investment in America. And until he gets out of the White House, that's not going to stop. He will, through executive order or whatever, fiat or whatever you want to call it, that is going to continue. And we've got to keep, and two, Congress has to have some guts, Joseph. We're supposed to be, have government's checkbook, and not America's checkbook, but the government's checkbook. Yeah. There is a difference there. and and we need to start using that in these departments. And until we do that, we're going to be sunk.
Well, to that point about Congress having some guts, new topic for you. You serve on the House Oversight and Accountability Committee. Evidence seems to grow that President Biden, despite previous denials, may have in fact had conversations with Hunter Biden about foreign business dealings and may have in fact personally benefited from that prior to being president of the United States. The legacy media, in fact, is now starting to ask him questions about this. That tells you perhaps where they're at with this. Do you think there is fire causing this particular smoke?
100%. I've seen the records. I've stated this during mob school. I think the Biden crime family was asleep during money laundering class because the money clearly, I mean, when you're paying minors, kids with the name Biden, minors, hundreds of thousands of dollars for nothing. I mean, that sounds like Congress paying somebody hundreds of thousands of dollars for doing nothing. But if you follow the money, it's over 20 million. I suspect it might even double. Every time you turn over a rock, there's something there. And the Justice Department is just sitting on their hands and not doing anything about it. They've had 5 years to investigate Hunter, and he got basically what I've seen people in Tennessee get a larger punishment for a traffic violation.
Congressman Burchett.
He walked and with two different sets of justice.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. I've got to let you go. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Joseph. It's been great.